Okay, welcome everybody to the first in what will be a series of interviews with practice managers from across the country that have had experiences with Lean Six Sigma and how they have impacted their practice, hopefully making them more efficient and effective. And today we've got Kathryn with us, and I'm really honored that she's our first victim, if you will, and first volunteer to be willing to share her experiences. So Kathryn, I just would like you to start out by introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Sure. I'm Kathryn Bassano. I'm in Victoria, Texas. I've been a member of MGA for over 10 years and obtained my CMPE designation in 2012. I've been in the field of physician practice management for over 40 years, most of which has been in a hospital-based multi-specialty setting. Currently, I oversee 94 physicians, advanced practice providers, and staff in the fields of urology, pulmonology, general surgery, bariatric surgery, medical and radiation oncology, and family medicine. That's my world. In 2021, I earned my MGMA Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, and I plan to go on to obtain my black belt either this year or next year.
That is awesome. That's a big operation for such a young lady to have to deal with. That's for sure.
Thank you. I'll take the compliment.
We've known each other for a few years, so I guess I can get away with saying some things like that.
Sure.
But Kathryn, I want to just really kind of get into the meat of this and ask you kind of what triggered you to think about going to Lean Six Sigma as a principle relative to all of the different practices and the different environments that you're working in?
Well, we needed an organized and structured way to resolve our practice issues. We had tried various approaches, and they always fell short. We either never followed through, or they'd never gained traction in the first place, or they fell by the wayside even if we did implement them. So we had some issues there with finding a method or methodology in which to make improvements in our practices. I had previously obtained my white and yellow belt years ago, not that many years ago, but and so I was familiar with the principles of Lean Six Sigma, and I thought, why not go to the green belt level where you actually do a project and let's see how it works. So I think it was the lack of success in the past that led me to this end of getting the green belt.
Good. Well, so getting the green belt, but so that was what triggered you to do that for yourself. Can you kind of describe the culture in your organization? Have they been accepting of the concepts, or have they just sort of patted you on the back and say, way to go, young lady, you've done well? Or kind of how's the culture look relative to the idea of applying some of the principles of Lean and Six Sigma to their daily work?
Well, the culture we have here is very conducive to change and improvement. My person I report to, my CFO, Dwayne Woods, is a very big proponent of the methodology of Lean Six Sigma, and was hoping that we would go in that direction to solve our problems, having had previous experience with it. So there's basically 4 types of decision making that goes on in any world, but particularly in practice management: autocratic, which the leader decides what's going to go on; consultative, where we can decide what goes on with the input of the staff; democratic, which is each person kind of has a vote in the process; and then consensus decision, which the group decides what we're going to do. So of those 4 decision-making styles, I think the culture here is more consultative, whereas we lead the team, but we get input from the team. Of course, they realize that their input doesn't mean that that's what we're going to do. That input is just utilized in terms of the leader making the final decision. So we have that openness with the staff to get their input. I think we're somewhat transparent in how we do things. I try to be as transparent as possible with the staff and leadership. But obviously some things you're unable to share fully. But I think that most people want to have input into the process, and when they do, they have more buy-in into the process because they've been involved in coming up with the solutions themselves. So that type of getting input from the staff and utilizing that input to make final decisions is the culture we have here.
Wow. So when you did your project, did you end up having to do it all by yourself, or did you have good support from your team? How did that sort of work, and kind of how do you see the team going from here?
Well, I think the project, the formality of doing the project, I think was good. What I think helped us out a lot was really doing the project the way it's supposed to be done. That is getting buy-in from upper management. So I did a business case first to justify the time and expense of doing the project, which is what we're taught. And my CFO looked that over and he said, "This looks like a worthy project, proceed." So then I proceeded to create a project charter, which we're taught to do, which is sort of a roadmap to keep the project on task. Without the project charter, I think we would have had the same ill success we had before in not having a track to run on and not getting things done. The team was put together by looking at the various roles that we needed to make the project successful. So we had subject matter experts, we had a recorder, we had a team leader, a project leader. We looked at the different roles and we decided who was going to be best fit for the role for our first project. I had a kickoff meeting with those folks and we said, okay, we've got a plan. This is what we're going to do. Our project was actually, this was our first project. It was improving appointment scheduling in the urology practice. And that's what we did for our first project. So getting the team together was an important part of the success of the project, picking the right people for the right roles.
Well, that's for sure. And so you felt like because they were in the right roles, they contributed a lot to the project itself then? They brought their ideas, their thoughts, their energy and so on, or did they kind of balk at the idea of having to follow through in some formal process of some sort?
I think a lot of it has to do with how it's rolled out. And when we had our kickoff meeting, we had a lot of energy and excitement about it. And of course, as the leader, that was my role, was to get everybody energized and excited about it. Not like, oh, we have to do a project and you have to be on the team. It's kind of like, we're going to do this exciting thing. We're really going to fix a problem that's been bogging us down in this particular practice. And you're very special to be asked to participate in this. And the reason you've been asked is because of your knowledge and expertise in the areas in which you've been selected to give us input on and to fulfill these roles. And so you're very important to the team. And we really need you to make this team successful. And so we're going to meet, we're going to roll out the project. We're going to have weekly meetings followed by minutes. And we're going to keep this project on task. It's only going to be 6 weeks. It's not going to be forever. We're not going to solve the world's problems. We're just going to focus on what we want to accomplish in this project. And I think that helped them know that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's, we have a purpose. And the subject matter was relevant to the team that I put together because they all struggled with the problem we were having in the practice. So I think that they were interested and excited about finding a solution.
So when you did all that, then did it work? What was your outcome then?
Well, I think the important thing was to stick to our project charter. I cannot emphasize how important that is. And I think in the beginning, people thought, well, this is so formal. We have to have all these bullet points and subtitle, whatever. The charter itself was, written out. But I told them, I said, this is our roadmap. If we follow this charter, we're charting our course. Basically, that's what a charter is. We're charting our course to the end. And we use the DMAIC model versus the Plan, Do, Study, Act model, which you can choose either or. For it gives us more structure. So I think that they realize that if we follow this plan, we're going to reach the end that we're seeking. And it was successful because of that, sticking to the project charter.
So when you say successful, then did you achieve 10% improvement? Did you achieve 5%? What percentage improvement did you?
Well, we exceeded our goal. In essence, it was taking from the time a referring doctor sent a patient to our urology clinic It was taking us 21 days to literally address that referral and get it on the books. And that's then, of course, you're talking about 2-3 weeks out from there to get the patient on the schedule. This was causing problems. We couldn't get to those referrals quick enough. We thought by the time the project was done, we got it down to just a couple of days. I think if I recall correctly, we got it down to 3 or 4 days from 21 days. So it was quite a lot of a percentage of improvement. One of the things that I think happened in the beginning is everyone said, oh, what are we going to do different than we're doing now? You know, nothing's going to change. You know, we've tried this, we've tried that. You know, I don't see how this is going to work. You know, in terms of, I mean, they were excited about the project, but once we got started, they thought, how is this going to be different? You know, we don't, if we knew the solutions. And so I told them, I said, this is why we're doing the project. We don't have the solutions and we don't want to presume we do. We want to let the project unfold. We want to define our problem. We're going to have to find out how we're going to measure what we're currently doing. And that's how we came up with the 21 days. And then we're going to have to analyze that data, and we're going to have to figure out what is going on here. What are the shortcomings along the way for it to be taking that long to do? I said, once we do those 3 steps, then we're going to improve the process because we'll have information. And then, of course, we'll remeasure the work, and we'll see what kind of improvements we made. And then we'll continue to control that over time and tweak it as needed to stay on task.
So you would then follow with the continuous process improvement idea of being able to say, we got it this far, but we can still even do a little bit better.
Yes, exactly. And I think that we have made continuous improvement. We created a spreadsheet where we're continually tracking the referrals, and the processes we put in place to solve the problem came out of the group's synergy. It wasn't that we knew this beforehand or we wouldn't have done the project. So it was by writing on a whiteboard, by looking at things, by tossing things around, by getting everybody's input. The synergy of that led us to ideas that I don't think any one of us could have come up with on our own. So it was that group energy that really got us to the solutions that we sought. And so we do control it now because we want to make sure we don't slip back and go back. And so we have a spreadsheet, and the office manager controls that particular practice, and she monitors it on a weekly basis. And you know, she reports to me on how we're doing. And if something's falling off a little bit, we go back and tweak things a little bit. So we kind of keep it steady.
Well, it sounds like it was very successful and you learned a lot along the way. So you did this one project. Have you been able to move forward and do additional projects based on what you learned? Or have you just said, okay, we did this one project and it worked, it was fun, and then now we'll go back to the way we've always done it? How has that worked in your opinion?
Yeah, well, you know, we had such good success with this first one. I created little certificates, and I had my CFO sign them, and they proudly displayed their certificates on the wall that they were a participant in this lean project. You know, I think that was very helpful. At the last meeting, we recognized everybody, we applauded everybody. We gave everybody their little 5 minutes of fame in terms of their contribution to the project. And so they went and talked to the other practices and the other members of the teams about this. So the next one we did was in bariatrics. This was reducing the total time of the bariatric patient visit. Our bariatric surgeon really only has 1 day in clinic because he travels to satellite clinics and he's in surgery a lot. So we thought, well, how can we increase his surgeries? Well, by increasing his new patients. Well, how do we do that? We have to shave off time so that he can see more new patients in a day. And so that's what that project was all about. And we looked at various ways to make the visit more efficient, to shave more time off so that we could, in fact, book more patients, new patients on his clinic day. And that has, we've really turned our bariatric practice around because of that. He's exceeding his goals, and we're really doing great in that practice because we implemented the same process, the DMAIC model in that. The other one we did was, this was another one we did, retaining the overall number of patients seen in the oncology practice. We had 2 oncologists and 1 left. And so we thought, how do we keep that same level of patience with only one doctor and the 3 advanced practitioners we had? And so we came up with ideas and solutions to better utilize the nurse practitioners and to rearrange the schedule appropriately. And we did a lean team on that, and that was very successful too. And we've been able to, we track that. We do a spreadsheet. We're not quite at 100% of our goal, but we're like in the high 80s, low 90s, but that's still good in terms of retaining the same amount of patients with one less doctor. So that was another project we did.
That is just amazing that you've been able to do that. I didn't realize that you had, I knew you had told me that you had gone beyond that first project, but I didn't realize that you had done as much as you have and had the impact that you've had. What are your board members, your doctors, your owners of the practice, or the overall higher ups? Are they aware of this, and are they endorsing this and looking at this as a continual process that you will always be able to use then?
Yes, they're very supportive. As I said, my CFO is very much a proponent or a fan of the Lean Six Sigma process, and I've reported these results to him, and he's very, very pleased with the results. In fact, our next project is going to be an interdepartmental, where all of the projects I've done, they're in my practices where I'm the leader. We have another project that we're going to start where I'm going to interface with another peer of mine, and that's going to be a little more difficult because I don't have control over that peer or nor her team. But we're having problems with patients understanding their patient balances when they have a surgery, what they owe the hospital and what they owe the practice, the surgeon, and there's been a lot of miscommunication. So we're trying to get that squared away. So that'll be challenging because, as I said, I won't have the purview. That won't be all under my purview. So I think that'll be challenging. But that's kind of branching out now into a little bit more of a difficult project.
But you've got the documentation, you've got the roadmap in place. You sort of have a guidebook, if you will, that would allow you to talk to your peer and say, look at what we've been able to do, and
yes,
and so you'll be able to migrate it a little bit easier than if you didn't have anything to show for it. So is that kind of how you feel about it then?
Yes, and I did share with her some of these other projects, and she had heard of Lean Six Sigma, but had never been involved in a project, and was excited to have the structure. Again, that's what we as leaders crave, is structure. We know what we want. We know the end. We can begin with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey says. We know where we want to be, but how do we get there? How do we achieve that without, as I said in the beginning, falling off track or letting things fall by the wayside? And because we're all so busy, and pieces of a project don't always get done just because we put them on our task list or our to-do list or our calendar,
Right.
because we get sidetracked. And so when we have a project chart and we have a meeting on the books, on the calendar, and we're going to keep that meeting and we're going to keep the project going, that is what is so essential to the success.
And you're able to keep the scope in focus a little bit more, so those things that interfere with you on a daily basis can't get in the way, because you're able to say, this is what our focus is and where we're going.
Exactly. And even within the scope of the project, we keep there's called project creep, where we start to look at going down rabbit trails on so many different things. And so number one, we're keeping to the schedule when we schedule these meetings at the same time, generally the same time and day of the week. And so it's part of our weekly schedule. But within that time frame, we're also focusing on the crux of the matter, and we're not looking at all the other, because that comes up when you're doing a project. All these other things come up. We say, nope, that's not what this project's about. We're focusing on this that we defined in the beginning, and we can put those in the parking lot and get to those another time, another day. But we're going to focus on resolving this problem in this time span. And I think that's what makes it so successful, with the focus and the time span, where we're giving it a deadline in which to achieve the results.
That is awesome. So you've learned a lot from this. Are there any sort of key takeaways that you feel you could offer to your fellow practice managers that are hopefully viewing and listening to what we're talking about today?
Yes, I do. I think number one, the DMAIC model worked best for us because that's define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And those steps, if you follow those steps, it just makes perfect sense, you know. So that we learned that model, and now we use that in little mini bites when we're solving small problems throughout the day. Everybody thinks lean now, like people, the manager will come to me and say, you know, there's 10 steps to this project. That's not lean. You know, we've got to get it down to 3 or 4 steps, you know. And so sometimes we're not doing a full blown project, but we're thinking lean. And so we're looking at waste, you know, what are we doing that doesn't need to be done? And repetition and redundancy and useless work that somebody might have done because they've always done it. And now we don't need to do it anymore. So I think we're looking at that in all aspects of our practice to try to make improvements. So that's something. A couple of other things is, and I mentioned the project creep. You have to stick to the definition of your project. I think that another thing I learned was you can't assume that you know the answer until you do the define, measure, and analyze phases. Because if you presume you know the answer, then why do the project? You know, and when people start to say, well, this is never going to work, or, you know, this doctor's not going to change his way, or, you know, those kind of things. No, we've overcome that. We realize that that's how you see it in the beginning, but you have to pursue, you have to go through the steps, and you uncover things that you never thought you would uncover. So I think that's a good takeaway. Again, I think the creating, I mentioned this earlier, but I can't say enough, the project charter is essential for keeping track. You can even do it, you can even do a rapid cycle lean team for, you know, the 5 steps in 5 days if you want to. If you have a small project, you don't have to necessarily drag it out for 5 or 6 weeks, but you certainly don't want to drag it out for many months, because then it'll lose its momentum. I would say, you know, a matter of weeks, maybe anywhere within, you know, 6 weeks to 3 months would probably be a good time frame. And I think another thing we learned is don't ignore the control phase, because once you do the project, if you just abandon it after that, it's going to revert back. It could revert back, not necessarily will, but by controlling it and keeping track of those metrics that you did during the project, keeps you from or prevents the project, or prevents the tasks from reverting back, but also gives you the focus to make minor tweaks along the way. Just like someone on a road, you know, they may veer off a little bit. Well, we got to get back on the road. You know, we're veering off. We got to get back on the road. What do we need to do to get this project back, or this outcome back to where it was? We know we can do it. We did it before. And even how can we do it better? How can we even make it better? So I think the don't ignore the control phase is another thing we learned.
Wow, this is amazing. I sincerely appreciate it. And in fact, I was just thinking, part of the reason that I'm doing this interview with you is I also posted about 7 different short videos on YouTube, and put it in my We Can Be Better podcast about DMAIC. And so your peer that you've got, you might refer her to that series, and she can get some basic education and background so that she may understand some of the terms and the concepts, which might help you a little bit more in terms of being able to get her to work together with you. So that would be a suggestion I would make for her and you, and then of course any one of the followers here, if they haven't actually taken time to look at that series, they could look at that series and gain some, I hope, some good information that will help them. So one more second. Any other? Well, I'm sorry. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just feel like once you do a full implementation of the Lean project, you then can take the basic concept and apply it to smaller things. I think that's important to mention too, because sometimes one might say, well, I don't have time to do a full-blown project. I can't pull all these people together. Everybody's busy doing something else. We're putting in a new software or whatever. And so rather than do nothing, better to do a full-blown project. But in lieu of that, it's rather than doing nothing, do a smaller version, do a somewhat informal version of it. And you'll still get results. May not be as impactful as doing the full blown, but it's better than doing nothing or just saying, well, we can't do a full blown project, so let's not do anything. I think that's an important thing to mention too, is the smaller project, small implementation is still very, very impactful.
So that tells me that you have been able to change some of your own personal approaches by using some of the tools and the principles that you learned through this process to change yourself and to improve yourself as a manager then.
Right, but moreover, I have 5 key office managers that oversee the various specialties, and so my real goal is to get them to come up with solutions on their own without me having to initiate it, and they have. Some of them have come up to me and said, "Oh, look at this lean spreadsheet I created to track this and that," and I had one, my urology manager. She's tracking new referrals coming in, not the time it takes to refer them as our project was, but she's got a line graph, and she's learned Excel, and she's excited to show me that look, this is why we can justify more staff, because look at these numbers, they're soaring. And so she's, I guess, teaching the managers. You can teach a man, you can catch what's that expression, you can if you teach a man to fish, he'll fish for life. If you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. So teaching them to the process and letting them turn that into successes in their realms, I think, is equally important.
Well, that's great. We've overextended our time together, but I just want to say thank you so much for your efforts on behalf of all of the patients in the Victoria, Texas area. And I hope that you've had an impact now on some of our peers in terms of their willingness to say, you know what, I can improve myself and I can improve my practice by looking at someone and adapting some of these Lean Six Sigma principles. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. I sincerely appreciate it. You've been just awesome.
Thank you, Owen. Appreciate you.
And you have a great rest of your day.